Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most incredible, most complex pieces of biological engineering on the entire planet, the human muscular system.
I mean, seriously, have you ever stopped to think about it? We do this stuff thousands of times a day without giving it a second thought. But behind every single one of those simple actions is a biological process of absolutely mind-blowing complexity and precision.
Yeah, you heard that right. Over 600 muscles, all working together in perfect harmony. From the huge, powerful muscles that let you sprint and jump, all the way down to the tiny, delicate ones that create a smile. They are the engines that turn our thoughts into action.
So if we really want to understand how this whole system works, we've got to start with the hardware itself. What exactly is a muscle? Let's pop the hood and break down the components of your body's engine.
Get this. For men, we're talking about nearly half of your total body weight being pure muscle. For women, it's around a third. And this isn't just for looks. This is the fundamental machinery that allows us to actually interact with the world around us.
Now, what's so cool about this image is how it shows you this nested structure. You can see the individual muscle fibers. Those are the actual cells that do all the work, the contracting. Then, those fibers get bundled up, and then all of those bundles get wrapped up together to form the muscle itself. It's a brilliant design, kind of like twisting thousands of tiny weak threads into one incredibly powerful rope.
So here's how all those pieces fit together. You've got the muscle fibers doing the pulling. You've got the fascia, which is this connective tissue that holds them all together. The main fleshy part of the muscle, that's called the belly. And then finally, you have the tendons, these super tough cords that act like anchor points, attaching the muscle to your skeleton so it can actually pull on your bones and make you move.
Okay, so we've got the engine. But you know, an engine is totally useless without a spark plug and a driver behind the wheel. How does a simple thought in your brain become a physical movement? Well, that is all about electrical and chemical signals. This all happens in the blink of an eye, but it's a super clear four-step process. First, a nerve cell in your spinal cord fires off an electrical signal. That pulse zips down a long fiber to the muscle. At the very end, a chemical called acetylcholine gets released, and that's the messenger that jumps across the gap to the muscle fiber and yells, "Contract, now!"
In this image right here, it perfectly shows the basic unit of control. See, it's not one nerve for every single muscle cell. No, instead, one single nerve cell, called a motor neuron, controls a whole squad of muscle fibers. And that little group is called a motor unit. When that one neuron fires, its entire team contracts all at once.
And the size of these little squads is everything. It's what determines how precise you can be. In your eye muscles, a single nerve might control just 5 or 10 fibers. That's what allows for those incredibly fine movements. But in your huge back muscles, one nerve can command thousands of fibers at the same time for raw power. This is the reason you can thread a needle with your fingers, but you can't, write your name with your calf muscle. It's all about efficiency, precision where you need it, and brute force where you don't.
And here's where the system gets really, really clever. So how do you sustain a contraction, like holding a heavy bag of groceries? Well, your motor units actually work in shifts. One group will fire for a bit, and then it will rest, while another group takes over. This constant rotation allows your muscles to exert force for a long time without every single fiber just burning out instantly.
Okay, so now that we know the how, let's do a quick tour of the body and meet some of the major players in this incredible muscular symphony.
We'll start at the very top. The muscles in your head and neck, they are unbelievably complex. They control everything from the powerful crunch of your jaw to the tiniest, most subtle movements of your eyes and tongue, not to mention that huge range of facial expressions that are so critical for how we communicate.
Next up, let's talk about the core. These are the muscles of your torso and your back, and they are, quite literally, your foundation. They provide the stability you need for good posture, and they act as the anchor point for pretty much every powerful movement your arms and legs make.
Now the arms, they give us this perfect classic example of a fundamental rule. Muscles almost always work in pairs. Your biceps on the front is a flexor. It contracts to bend your elbow. The triceps on the back is an extensor. It contracts to straighten it back out. They're what we call antagonists, always working against each other to create smooth, controlled movement.
And finally, we get to the absolute powerhouses, the legs. And what's cool here is that unlike your arms, where flexing and extending are kind of equally important, your legs are dominated by these massive extensor muscles, your glutes, your quadriceps. They're designed for one primary, powerful job, pushing off the ground so you can walk, run, and jump.
All right, so we've looked at the hardware, but what about the software that runs it all?
How does your brain actually know what to do with all these muscles? Well, it turns out your nervous system comes with some pre-installed software, 4 core programs for generating movement.
And these 4 programs basically cover every single thing you do. You've got your reflexive actions, the totally automatic stuff. You have locomotor patterns for things like walking. You've got voluntary movements, which are conscious and deliberate. And finally, automated skills, the things you've practiced so much they feel completely effortless.
The simplest one is the reflex. You know, that classic knee-jerk test at the doctor's office? Well, the signal from the tap on your knee goes to your spinal cord and then straight back to the muscle. The brain isn't even involved in the loop. It's a hardwired shortcut designed for pure, unadulterated speed, usually to protect you from getting hurt.
Then you've got locomotion, like walking or running. And what's wild is that this is also mostly handled by the spinal cord. It has these built-in pattern generators that just automatically produce these rhythmic movements. Your brain just has to give the high-level command, hey, let's walk, and the spinal cord takes care of all the tricky coordination of your limbs.
And that brings us to our final and maybe the most fascinating topic of all. How do we actually learn to move? How do we go from being clumsy and thinking about every single step to moving with skill and grace? How does the brain actually learn?
Well, think about any new skill you've learned. Riding a bike, playing an instrument, whatever. It always starts as a voluntary movement. It's conscious, it's clumsy, it requires your absolute full attention. That's your cerebral cortex doing all the heavy lifting. But you practice, and with enough repetition, other parts of the brain, the cerebellum and basal ganglia, take over. The movement becomes automated. It's smooth, it's unconscious, and it frees up your brain to think about other things.
So, what makes us push through all that awkward practice? Well, it's because your brain actually rewards you for it. The moment you perform a movement correctly while you're learning, your brain releases a special chemical. You've probably heard of it. It's called dopamine. That chemical creates a feeling of pleasure, of satisfaction. It's literally your brain telling you, yes, do that again. It feels good to get better.
So, the next time you're dancing, or playing a sport, or even just out enjoying a walk, take a second to really appreciate that silent symphony that's going on inside you. That feeling of joy you get, it's not just an abstract idea. It's a chemical reward for mastering the incredible, complex, and beautiful art of movement. So I'll leave you with this. What movement brings you joy?